Silence arrives first, and in that silence, the soul trembles to confront the void. A single truth uncoils the mind, existence aches, and all our striving only fans the wound. There is no solace in comfort, no home in gratification, only the restless pulse of desire that mocks our brief lives. You drift in this waking dream, believing the world offers meaning. Yet meaning slips away like water, sliding through weary fingers. The lover, the ambition, the art, all glitter, but cannot still the ache. You feel beneath this veneer the throb of dissatisfaction, quiet at first, then steadily monstrous. This is suffering's inheritance. To breathe and to know it ends in emptiness. You follow the directions of modernity, the promises of progress, of self-improvement, of perpetual becoming. But these are illusions wearing the garb of hope. For every achievement there is fresh longing. In the mirror of ambition you chase shadows, believing facade is substance. Behind the applause is absence. You find that not even joy in creation rescues you from craving statter. It is not a punishment. Suffering is the marrow of being. You do not need persecution to suffer, you only need life. To want, to lose, to hope, to despair, all these are woven into the fibers of your being. The world does not heal this, it amplifies it with distraction. Consumerism, noise, connectedness, each a hand over the mouth of truth. Each 2 or 3 minutes of your watching, pause, breathe the weight of disappointment. Let the release come not in relief, but in recognition. A revelation that desire is the prison, and awareness of that is the window. You feel the knot in your chest, the hollow where promise once lodged, collapse. In that collapse, you sense a strange clarity. To own nothing inside is to become receptive to what is beyond illusion. Meanwhile, culture insists on identity, on narrative, on purpose. We must be someone, achieve something, define ourselves. But identity is a scaffold built on shifting sand. We build ourselves only to dismantle ourselves time after time, as roles fail and contexts shift. What remains when every mask is stripped away? A frightened stillness. Beneath the fear is quiet truth. You are not the roles. Suffering fractures that false self. It reveals the machinery of ego, the stories, the comparisons, the traps. When the machinery stops, silence rings. You are left unadorned. And for the first time, you glimpse the emptiness that was always you. Not ruin, but relief in surrender. You reach the crest of a bitter awakening. Owning nothing inside means seeing the world without filter, feeling reality as it is not as you wish. You realize the path offered by cultures of hope is circular. You swallow another pill of aspiration and again fall. Only when the chase ceases, when the want dissolves, is there an entrance. Not happiness, something stranger, sober, peace. It is not blissful, it is clarity. It is not warm, it is cold, but it is real. Pain is the midwife of this clarity. When desire is cut away, suffering remains, but suffering is transformed. It becomes the echo of existence unclothed. No stories, no illusions, just this breath. It is terrible and beautiful. It is emptying and full. It is the core of self-awareness. You see that every hope for lasting satisfaction is a betrayal. Even love, even art, even insight, they all slide. The only constant is relinquishment. You must let go again and again. Still, the world urges you to grip tighter. You feel the tension in your hands. The coins, the tokens, the data, the rolls all clutched in fear of being nothing. Yet to be nothing inside is the only path forward. Thus you unlearn all instruction, all promise of reward. You sit with the aching self that wants nothing else. You watch illusions collapse like ancient temples. You taste the raw honesty beneath the patterns. There is not a moral lesson here, only a metaphysical resignation. You do not become stronger, you become quieter. You do not gain power, you lose grip. There is no transcendence in action, only in abandonment. In the final minutes, your breath mellows, the pulse of desire fades. Presence remains, narrow and luminous. You have let all inside fall still. You need nothing, you expect nothing. You are not resolved, but you are honest. Not triumphant, but free from pretense. Stillness hums beneath your bones. Let existence wash over you without comment. Let the final syllable of self-delusion dissolve. You remain as witness, and not in closure, but in staying. Desire has vanished, the soul is empty, and that emptiness is its own beauty. The days pass, and with them, the quiet erosion of meaning. You awaken not to possibility, but to repetition. The world greets you with the same colors, the same tasks, the same faces wearing masks of interest. Beneath it all, the weight of weariness grows. It is not fatigue of the body, it is the soul's recognition of the absurd, the futility of movement within a cage whose bars are made of desire. You once believed pain was accidental, a deviation from the path. Now you see it is the path. It is not what happens to you, it is what you are born into. A hunger that cannot be stilled, a longing that reshapes itself after every fulfillment. You reach, grasp, achieve, and immediately the emptiness returns. This is the cycle, not of misfortune, but of being. The will, that ancient tyrant within, knows no peace. It compels without mercy. It creates phantoms of hope so that you chase them into the fog again and again. You believe this chase is life, but it is only motion without destination. The will is blind, and it leads you in circles, while whispering that progress is near. The illusion is not that happiness exists, but that it can last. A moment of joy flickers, and already it decays. You try to hold it, to cage the light, but it dims faster under your grip. The more you desire to keep, the more you suffer the loss. In this, even pleasure becomes a form of pain, the pain of impermanence. And yet you are told to strive, to improve, to create a better version of yourself. But who is this self? You pursue a phantom sculpted by comparison, always just out of reach. It is not you, it is the mask the world has placed over your longing. Every achievement feeds the illusion, makes the prison more ornate, but never opens the gate. You begin to see that suffering is not a flaw in the fabric of existence, it is the fabric. Joy is the brief shimmer on its surface, not the substance. When you accept this, a strange quiet descends. Not relief, not despair, just the still recognition that to exist is to bear the burden of wanting without end. Detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. It is not turning away from life, it is seeing life without disguise. You do not stop feeling, you stop being fooled by the idea that feeling should always be sweet. You allow the bitterness to unfold, without flinching, and in that unfolding, something releases. The heart, long clenched around dreams, begins to loosen. It does not rejoice, it resigns. But in resignation, there is freedom. When you no longer need the world to soothe you, the world cannot torment you. You begin to dwell within the space between desire and fulfillment, and find that this space is vast, echoing, and strangely sacred. What remains once you surrender the pursuit? Not nothing, but the absence of illusion. Not numbness, but the end of the fever. You are not dead, you are awake. For the first time, you inhabit the moment not as a means to something else, but as it is unadorned, unpromising, but real. And in this realness, there is a haunting beauty. The way the wind moves through empty streets, the silence between spoken words, the faint sadness in every sunset. These do not try to be more than they are. They do not seduce. They do not promise. They simply are. And in them, you see a reflection of the soul that owns nothing, needs nothing, and thus can see everything. This is not transcendence, it is exposure. The skin peeled back from illusion, the nerves raw with truth. There is no comfort here, but there is light. Not the light of salvation, but the cold, steady light of awareness. It does not warm, but it reveals. And in revelation, there is rest. You no longer ask what life owes you. You no longer bargain with time. You sit with the ache, and in doing so, the ache becomes less personal. It is no longer your suffering, it is the suffering. It moves through you like wind through a hollow tree. You bend, you echo, but you do not break. You do not need hope. You need honesty. You do not need belief. You need to see. The soul that owns nothing inside cannot be robbed. It cannot be wounded by the loss of what it never clung to. It is not invincible, but it is indifferent to victory. And in that indifference, it is finally free. The world does not weep for you. It does not see your quiet unraveling. Its pace remains indifferent. Its seasons rotate without pause. You stand alone in the crowd, unseen even by yourself. The noise around you masks the deeper silence within the silence that waits, that has always waited, for you to turn away from noise and face it. It is the silence of what you are when all pretensions fall. What are you without your story? Without your role, your status, your name? Strip all of it away, and what remains is not glorious, it is empty. That emptiness frightens most. And so they run back into the arms of distraction, of roles, of identity. But if you linger, if you dare to sit in the vacancy, you will find that the fear dissolves into something quieter. Not comfort, never comfort, but a stillness that asks nothing from you and yet offers everything the world cannot. Every desire you've ever chased has been a symptom of this emptiness, not its cure. You mistook the hunger for proof that something could satisfy, but hunger only proves you are trapped. The will never ceases. It dies only when you do, and so long as you obey it, you are its servant. Freedom is not in satisfying desire, it is in dissolving the illusion that desire can be satisfied. But to dissolve it, you must suffer it fully, not escape it, not numb it, but suffer it until it shows its true face, not as a path, but as a closed circle. Most never stay long enough to see that. They flee into distraction, careers, relationships, screens, self-improvement, but every escape deepens the prison. Only when you stop running does the cell become transparent. In that moment of stark awareness, when nothing distracts you and nothing soothes you, you meet the truth. Suffering is the price of being, not a penalty for mistakes, but the very shape of existence. We are born into lack. We emerge crying, already grasping, already missing something we cannot name. And for the rest of life, we try to fill that void with objects, with people, with meaning. But the void does not ask to be filled, it asks to be seen. And when you see it not flinchingly, but with clear eyes, it no longer terrifies. It becomes a mirror. You stare into the void and find your own face staring back, hollowed of illusion. You are not special. You are not chosen. You are not on a journey. You are simply here, and it is enough, because nothing more is given. From this gaze arises detachment, not as a choice, but as a consequence. When the world loses its false glow, you no longer reach for it with trembling hands. You let it be. You let others chase what you now see to be shadows. And you walk among them, unseen, untouched, no longer expecting to be healed by what has no medicine. This detachment is not coldness, but purity. It is the absence of need, not of compassion. You see others still grasping, still burning with hope, and though you cannot stop them, you weep quietly for what they will inevitably learn. Every joy they cling to is already dissolving. Every promise is already broken, not by malice, but by nature. The world gives only to take away, and the wise learn to stop asking. You begin to understand that love itself, that most exalted illusion, is a trick of the will. We are drawn to others, not out of fullness, but out of lack. We seek completion, but what we find is a mirror of our own longing. In moments of union, we forget the self, but only briefly, before the self reasserts its hunger, and so even love becomes a cycle of joy and sorrow, proximity and distance, fulfillment and regret. There is no salvation in another. No one can carry your suffering, no one can quiet your will. You must go inward, not to fix, not to improve, but to see, to witness the machinery of wanting, of fearing, of becoming, and then to step away from it. Not to escape, but to observe without being caught. This is the slow awakening, not of joy, but of awareness. You do not smile, you do not celebrate, but you begin to breathe differently. Less like someone seeking, more like someone who has stopped pretending. You inhabit time like a ghost watching its former life. You see the patterns without entering them. You let the world pass through you, ungrasped. The more you see, the less you need. The less you need, the closer you come to peace. Not peace as pleasure, but peace as silence. Nothing moves in you, nothing backs. You carry your sorrow like a cloak, not heavy, not light, but your own. You stop asking why. You stop waiting. You simply walk, slowly, through a world that is no longer required to please you. And this walking, this stillness in motion, is the final form of wisdom, not a state to be attained, but a truth to be embodied. You live, but without illusion. You breathe, but without expectation. You love, but without possession. You suffer, but without resistance. You no longer search for meaning, you become the one who has ceased to seek. And in that ceasing, something beautiful and bleak unfolds. The beauty of owning nothing inside. You pass through rooms filled with laughter and find no nourishment. Smiles stretch over hollowness. Conversations loop through rehearsed gestures. And eyes search one another not for truth, but for reflection. Everyone performs, because truth has no place here. The moment one speaks honestly, the illusion falters, and all eyes avert. For to speak of suffering sincerely is to remind others of what they have buried under noise. So you learn silence, not as retreat, but as reverence. Words cannot reach where you now dwell. The old language of dreams, of hope, of future, feels foreign. You begin to communicate only through presence, through absence, through gaze. You do not interrupt the dance of others, but you do not join it. You sit at the edge, a ghost that remembers being alive. Even nature begins to speak differently, not in inspiration, but in confirmation. The wind does not console, it reveals transience. The river does not sing, it repeats. The trees do not reach upward in joy, they stand because they cannot move. You see that even beauty is bound by decay. The flower blooms because it must perish. The sky is wide because it swallows everything. And you, this small witness to it all, are no longer seeking your place. You understand now there is no rightful place in a world ruled by change. You do not belong. You are merely passing through like everything else. And instead of resisting that truth, you begin to dwell in it. Transience is no longer your enemy, it is your reflection. Even your memories lose their color. What once hurt now seems distant. What once delighted now feels faint. You do not grieve this, you simply notice. Memory itself is a form of illusion, a retelling, not a return. You see how much of your identity was built on these echoes. And now, with their fading, you feel less solid but more true, lighter but not freer, emptier but less burdened. You no longer wish to be understood. That was always another disguise of the will, the desire to be seen, affirmed, validated. Now you see that no one can truly understand another. Every soul is a locked room, and language is a broken key. What you suffer alone. But in that solitude is not despair, but a strange dignity. For to carry suffering without demand, without complaint, is to become something rare, not admired, not envied, but real. Others may never see what you bear, and that is as it should be. The world does not reward clarity, it rewards performance. But you have ceased to perform, and in doing so, you have ceased to betray yourself. The crowd chases novelty. You watch as they devour experience after experience, never tasting the truth of any. They are not alive, they are distracted from their dying. You, however, walk slowly through the same corridor, again and again, until every shadow reveals its source. You are not escaping, you are confronting. And what you confront is not merely the world, but yourself, the last illusion. The belief that you are someone, that you must become someone, that your being hinges on narrative. You see now that the self is not a substance, but a story. A useful fiction, but a fiction nonetheless. And when the story ends, nothing essential is lost. In this, you no longer fear death. You have already begun to dissolve. Not tragically, but peacefully. You are not fighting the end, you are becoming it. Each day, a little more fades. Each attachment loosens. Each desire weakens. And beneath it all, a quiet space opens, wide enough to contain everything and nothing. You dwell there now, among ruins, but without regret. Among ghosts, but without fear. You do not ask for more time, because time was never yours. You do not ask for more love, because love was always conditional. You do not ask for more meaning, because meaning was the mask of suffering. You ask for nothing, and in asking nothing, you finally see. You see the futility, not as tragedy, but as the end of delusion. You see the pain, not as punishment, but as the shape of existence. You see yourself, not as a being, but as a witness. And in that witnessing, the final truth stands naked. There is no salvation, only understanding, no victory, only surrender. And so, with empty hands and quiet breath, you continue. Not forward, not upward, but inward, deeper into the silence, further into the stillness, until even the desire to speak of it disappears. The silence deepens, not as an absence, but as a presence more real than sound. It does not comfort, it does not soothe, it merely island, and in its stillness, it lays bare the architecture of existence, form without substance, movement without purpose, striving without rest. The world appears not as a home, but as a theater of shadows, each flicker pretending at permanence. You remember moments of joy, and they too begin to unravel, not in bitterness, but in truth. Joy, you see now, was never free. It always came tied to expectation, always haunted by its brevity. Even in laughter, there was fear of its end. Even in connection, the seed of loss. This is the nature of pleasure, to vanish the moment you become aware of its fragility. Detachment begins not as choice, but as necessity. You have seen too much, felt too deeply to believe again. The soul can only stretch so far before it learns to stop reaching. What once stirred longing now stirs stillness. The music no longer promises, it simply plays. The sky no longer invites, it simply watches. And you, no longer pleading for more, begin to dissolve into this indifferent vastness. You understand now that nothing belongs to you, not your name, not your thoughts, not even your pain. Everything is borrowed from a world that never promised to let you keep it. The more you clutched, the more it slipped. Ownership was always illusion, control, a dream, and identity, a mask worn too long until the skin beneath forgets itself. Others still chase, and you do not blame them. You were one of them once, running through the maze of ambition, through the corridors of desire, each turn revealing a wall, each success birthing a deeper hunger. You remember the exhaustion, not of effort, but of hope. The endless dawns that brought nothing new, only the same ache dressed in different colors. Now, you no longer seek escape. There is nowhere to go that is not already marked by impermanence. Every path curves back into the self, and the self, no matter how adorned, is hollow. Even memory folds upon itself, revealing more absence than event. You are not the sum of your experiences. You are the residue that remains when experience has passed through. What then is left, once all is seen and released? Only presence. Not the presence that glows with fulfillment, but the kind that watches without interfering. A silent observer, neither approving nor denying, simply aware. It does not rise to meet the world. It allows the world to rise and fall, again and again, without clinging. Even suffering becomes transparent. It still burns, but the burning no longer binds. Pain becomes a sensation, not an identity. It passes through like weather. You no longer ask why it comes. You no longer pray for its end. You watch it with the same eyes that watch joy, knowing neither can remain, knowing neither define you. This is the rhythm now, a breath without destination, a gaze without need. You live not in anticipation, but in suspension. There is no goal, there is no narrative arc, there is only unfolding. And in this unfolding, the will finally grows quiet. Not because it is satisfied, but because it is seen. To see the will clearly is to strip it of its power. It is to know that no matter how much it consumes, it remains hungry. That its promises are bait, not truth. And when you cease to follow it, something ancient within you exhales. Not with joy, but with relief. As if returning to a forgotten homeland, the place beneath, wanting. There, you find the contours of true solitude. Not loneliness, but the absence of dependence. You are no longer leaning on dreams, on futures, on others. You stand in the open, with nothing left to prove, nothing left to pursue. And though the wind of the world howls around you, it does not enter. You have no doors left open to it. In this solitude, time begins to bend. Moments stretch and vanish, uncounted. The past no longer reaches you, the future no longer threatens. Each breath is a circle, complete and empty. There is no pressure to become. You are not unfolding, you are unmoving. And in this stillness, suffering loses its grip. You remain quiet, watchful, whole, not through gain, but through surrender. And the world, this flickering dream, drifts by, unable to bind you again. And now the final stillness begins to gather, like dusk softening the edges of the day. There is no conclusion, for nothing truly ends. Things only cease to compel. The threads loosen not with force, but through quiet recognition that they were never tied. One by one, the illusions release their grip, not torn away, but faded, like breath on a mirror. What once felt urgent now feels distant. Even the echoes of longing no longer stir. You look inward and see not a fire extinguished, but a hearth that never truly burned, only flickered with borrowed light. All that drama, all that striving, and for what? To circle back here, where nothing is needed and nothing is missing because nothing was ever truly possessed. There is no sadness in this vanishing, only a solemn kind of peace. The kind that arrives when the last hope has been surrendered and the self no longer begs to be made whole. Wholeness, it turns out, was the ache itself, the longing that refused to stop. Now, in the absence of longing, you discover not completion, but quiet. And in quiet, you dissolve. You become less defined, less tethered. Your name feels foreign, your past distant, your body a husk through which time continues to move. The boundaries of identity dissolve like morning fog. You no longer say, I suffer, or I see, or I am. You simply witness, without center, without shape, without end. The world carries on, faces pass, leaves fall, days arrive and vanish without announcement. You walk through it like water, through water, without resistance, without imprint. You are not here to change anything. You are here to remain unchanged by the illusions that insist they matter. Even the soul, once inflated with its own importance, now lies bare, not ruined, but returned. It becomes like wind in an empty room, still moving, but heard only faintly, touching everything without being held. You do not shine, you do not rise, you simply remain, and in that there is a serenity that no promise could offer. Death no longer startles. It is no longer the foreigner. It has become familiar, like a door you have always known you would walk through. And now that everything you once carried has been let go, the door no longer frightens. It does not end the journey. It ends the compulsion to continue. This is the quiet liberation, to own nothing inside. To have nothing left to defend, nothing left to fear, nothing left to seek. To carry your sorrow like air, weightless, because it is no longer yours. To be hollow, not from emptiness, but from having shed all illusion. This hollowness is not lacking, it is vastness, not absence, but space. You do not ascend, you do not awaken, you do not merge. You vanish gently, like a footprint erased by wind, not forgotten, for you were never fully known, not lost, for you were never truly found, simply gone, because there was nothing left to hold you here. And as the final breath passes not of the body, but of the will, you rest, not in peace, but in non-becoming, in a place where even silence ends, where even awareness fades, where nothing remains, and that nothing is enough.